Hey, what's going on, everybody? Justin here at Chomful Reads, and in this video we're going to be doing my November TBR, and this is pretty much going to be my TBR for the NFN 2018 readathon, which is an entirely non-fiction readathon, which I'm super excited about. This readathon was created by Kylie A and is co-hosted by Alex Black and myself. I'm going to leave their links down below to their channels. You should definitely go check them out and subscribe to them if you haven't already. But let's just get started. I think there's 13 or 14 different challenges that you can attempt to do if you want to, but we definitely encourage doubling up or tripling up or quadrupling up if you want to, just to make things a little bit more fun. I'm going to try and do all the challenges, with a few of them doubling and tripling up, but I'm trying to cover all the bases. A few I'm kind of stretching it a little bit to meet some of the challenges, but yeah, let's just get started with the first one, which is read a book with diagrams, charts, or graphs of some kind. And I'm going to be going with Barons of the Sea and Their Race to Build the World's Fastest Clipper Ship by Stephen Ujifusa. And I was actually sent this book in exchange for a review, but I'm really excited for it. It looks really cool. It's about during the 1800s, how in the mid-19th century, American merchants kind of created the clipper ship, which is kind of like an iconic American type ship. It's a little bit smaller than a lot of merchant vessels, but it's really, really fast. So it was able to outcompete a lot of other countries to different markets around the world. And I think primarily this book is going to be about, with the backdrop of sort of the Chinese opium trade and opium wars kind of going on in the background, which is going to be kind of cool. But there are some diagrams and charts, or at least diagrams anyways, I know from the back of the book, which is really good because I don't know really anything about like nautical sailing vessels, to be honest, so I'm definitely going to have to make use of the appendix for like certain terms I'm totally guessing. But it looks really cool, really interesting. I haven't read too much American history, I guess, but this just sounds like a really cool way how basically the West Coast, basically like California, how it became so basically dominant economically. And before then, it was kind of a backwater, but after these sort of merchant fleets with their clipper ships sailing to China and the Indies and stuff, probably able to make a ton of money, I'm guessing, and that's probably why the West Coast became such a powerhouse that is today. So anyways, like I said, Barons of the Sea looks really good. I'm doing that for that challenge. Let's see, another one. Conflict other than World War II and maps. Well, they're two separate challenges, maps and a conflict or war other than World War II, just because we think World War II gets kind of all the coverage compared to everything else. But if you guys follow my channel, you know I really enjoy reading about World War I. So I'm going with one of my Osprey publishing books that I try to read every month, and I'm going with Gallipoli 1915, and this one is by Philip Haythornthwaite. Now, this is from the campaign series, and I haven't actually read one of them yet. They have literally like a dozen series, if I had to guess, but there's lots of different maps in these books. I don't know if there's really illustrations in this one. I think it's, well, actually it looks like there is one. So there's some illustrations, lots of photographs, lots of like kind of blowout maps and diagrams, things like that. Really cool. If you guys don't know, Gallipoli is basically when the British Empire in World War I thought they could go through the soft underbelly of the Central Powers, basically attack the Ottoman Turks in the Dardanelles in Gallipoli and stuff, and it ended up being quite a disaster, to be honest. Also, what's kind of interesting about the Gallipoli campaign is that on the Allied side, it was primarily Anzac troops that were deployed, which are World War I soldiers that were from Australia and New Zealand. And I actually don't know too much about the Anzacs, but I definitely want to learn more about it, so that's why I'm going with Gallipoli 1915. Alright, the next one, a book about nature of some kind. And I'm going to go with a NetGalley book that I was able to get, and that is The Truth About Animals. And this one is by Lucy Cook. And this one kind of caught my eye, not just because it's kind of an animal book, which there wasn't too many on NetGalley, but basically in the subtitle, I think it said like stone sloths, and I pretty much just have to know what the heck we're talking about when we're talking about stone sloths, to be honest. So I just figure you can't go wrong with that kind of a nature book about animals, so that's why I'm going with The Truth About Animals. Alright, and the next one, a book that deals with something that happened at least 100 years ago. And I'm also counting this as partially for the memoir biography challenge, and I'm going to explain why in just a second. But I'm going with The Rise and Fall of the Dinosaurs, A New History of a Lost World by Steve Buscemi. And this obviously takes place a lot longer than 100 years ago, but this whole year I've been sort of just craving like a dinosaur book for whatever reason, and I thought I had one earlier, but it turned out to be more just kind of physics and science more than dinosaurs, I guess. But this one looks really good. It's pretty much highly rated by everyone online that I see that has reviewed it. So I'm definitely looking forward to it. And based on the reviews and stuff, it's not just about the dinosaurs per se, but about sort of the contemporary state of archaeology. And it's partly, I think, like a lot of memoir-ish stuff, based on like Steve Buscetti's personal, basically, adventures going around the world doing archaeological excavations and things of that nature. So I'm gonna count this as kind of like part memoir, even though I'm not quite sure how much of that is gonna be in the book. But it sounds really interesting. I really love when science authors basically put their own personal experiences in science books. I think it just comes across really well, in those kind of two like ways of writing or genres meshed together really well. So that's why I'm going with The Rise and Fall of the Dinosaurs. Alright, let's see. A STEM-based book is the next challenge. And if you guys don't know what STEM is, it's science, technology, engineering, mathematics. But I'm going with another NetGalley book, and it's The North Pole. And this one, I gotta look at my paper. It is by Michael Bravo. I started a book called Lost Antarctica by James McClintock, and that's basically about, that's where the South Pole is. I don't know too much about the North Pole. A lot of the science books that I've read deal with Antarctica or the South Pole instead, so I thought it'd be kind of neat to look at basically the North Pole, which is going to be quite a bit different, I think, in some ways than the South Pole, since there's not actually a landmass continent there. So yeah, I have no idea anything about the book except that it sounded interesting to me, and that's why I'm going with the North Pole. Alright, for another challenge is read a book regarding a different culture or a country that you haven't been to before. Once again, I'm going with another NetGalley book, and this one is actually Versailles. And this one is by Colin Jones. I know I gotta write them down because I don't physically have them since they're on NetGalley and I use my phone to record, so. But anyways, I guess I could have just memorized it beforehand, but hey. But anyways, this one is called Versailles, and it's obviously going to be about the palace at Versailles in France. This is like, the epitome of like luxury, built by started, I don't know, was it started by Louis XIV, the Sun King? I'm not sure. That's why I need to read the book, because I don't, like I said, I don't read much modern-ish history. I know that's not really modern per se, but my cutoff is usually around Renaissance time, so around 1500, whereas Versailles wasn't built, I think, till 16 or 1700, so I definitely feel like I need to learn more about kind of this dynamic era of history, and like the whole, the divine right of kings and all that stuff, basically in the 16th and 17th and 18th centuries. It's just something I'm not super familiar with, which is why I'm going with Versailles. Also, I think at the beginning of the year, I read a book called City of Light, City of Poison, which takes place during the reign of Louis XIV, though it's about more like the police commissioner and this whole like poison escapade that was going on. And that actually was pretty interesting for me, especially for, like I said, like an era I don't read too much about. So that's also partly why I wanted to read Versailles, to get more context for that whole like situation that was going on as well. Alright, let's see. Read a book that's going to help you think about some deep thoughts. So we're kind of going with something maybe like philosophical or something like that. And I'm going to be trying to do more great courses. I just reviewed The World of Byzantium. So I know it's not really a book. Well, I guess you could read the lecture transcripts. I know they sell those. So I guess it's, kind of a book. But I'm going to be listening to an introduction to Greek philosophy. And this one is taught by David Ruchnick, I believe. Yeah, David Ruchnick. I'm really interested in ancient philosophy, especially like, the Greeks and Roman, well, I guess the Romans don't have too much, it's more like moral philosophy of the Romans. But anyways, like I said, I really enjoy Aristotle, so I assume there's going to be quite a bit of that. But there's also going to be a lot of pre-Socratics, I know from looking at the lecture titles, so it just sounds really interesting. Like I said, I just want to try and incorporate a lot more philosophy into my reading. I've really slacked off this year. I think I've only done 3 or 4 philosophy books. So I figured this would be a good way to basically find out some more basically general concepts about classical philosophy, and just see what's going on, and see if I can find more sources to or look at the bibliography and stuff, and see if I can find basically more resources to continue my studies on that. Alright, let's see, a book that will help you develop a talent or a skill. And I'm going with something, we went from like Greek philosophy and stuff. We're going to go to pizza on the grill. I can grill like some stuff pretty good. I'm not really good at like cooking, I guess. I just don't, I guess, have the patience for it. But I do enjoy, grilling like meat and stuff on the go. But I want to try making maybe a pizza, just because that's kind of a more of like a regular like dinner food that, you just can make just the pizza and that's like the meal. But they have tons of different stuff going on. Some look like really insane and crazy. I'm probably not going to do anything like that. But, I hope there's a lot of tips and like kind of an introductory chapter that's not even like recipes. There's a lot of just sort of information material and stuff. So I'm going to read that, see if I can, figure out basically the basics anyways, to see if I can just make like either like a cheese or just like a pepperoni pizza on the grill and just go from there. But I just thought this was kind of a neat way to learn kind of a new thing to make for supper. So that's what I'm going to be doing for a new skill basically. All right, read a book that contains essays or a collection of essays. Now, I'm definitely not going to read the whole book, but my friend Tim just gave me this awesome Franklin edition of Montaigne, or Michel de Montaigne, who was pretty much the guy, I think in the 1600s. He was a French writer who made the essay like a legit thing, or like a legit way of writing. Before that, it was kind of, I wouldn't say it wasn't frowned upon. It was just more, he wrote like a treatise, which was kind of like a really long essay type idea. But he was the one that first started, short, just personal essays. And I've never read it before. But I looked at some of the essays. This isn't all his writings. I think most of the time there's like 3 or 4 volumes if you contain if the volumes contain all his works. But he's got a couple essays in here I'm probably going to try and read that are fairly short. But he's got one on books, which sounds really good, and then like Virtue and Anger and Ancient Customs. They just sound really cool, and there's one on cannibals. So I'm gonna just like kind of pick and choose through these essays and just see basically what it's all about. I know he's pretty famous as a writer and stuff. Like I said, I've never read him before, so that's why I'm gonna give Montaigne a shot. And like I said, this is just like a superb, awesome kind of like quarter leather bound edition from the Franklin Library. Just really cool. All right. Now we need to, let's see, the next challenge is to read a book from from a journalist author. And I'm going to go with From Mist and Stone, The History and Lore of the Celts and Vikings. I'm reading a book on the Vikings right now and enjoying it. And I'm always on the lookout for more Viking books. Plus, I like the Celts. So you got Celts and Vikings right there. And I'm going with the National Geographic book, and it's authored by George Stone, who's actually like an editor of their, I think, National Geographic Travel, like the travel division, I guess, of National Geographic. So he's definitely like a seasoned journalist. And there's also tons of high quality photographs, as you can see, definitely like throughout the whole book, which is going to be really cool. Definitely want to see what this one's all about, and I assume he's going to be a great journalist author, so that's why I picked From Mist in Stone. Alright, and for the last book, I'm going with 30 Million Words, Building a Child's Brain by Dana Suskind, and this completes 2 challenges, the first one being that it contains only text, which sounds really easy, except that I think every book that I've shown you so far either has plates, or illustrations, or pictures, or diagrams, or charts, or graphs, or maps, or something. So actually it was kind of hard to find a nonfiction book that actually just had just text, even though I know there are quite a few out there. And it also completes the other challenge of a book that has something to do with the mind, or something like, psychological, something like that. But I was really interested in this book. I have a little guy who's, was he almost 9 weeks old now. But basically the premise of this book is that children, if they hear 30 million words like out loud before the age of 4, they do much better off, I guess, developmentally or intellectually or something like that, compared on average to children that do not hear 30 million words basically in their first 4 years of life. Now, I thought this was a really interesting topic. I like to read to my son pretty much every night out loud. I'm not sure how much he appreciates some of the books I read to him, like pretty much like this whole pile I've shown you. But until he understands a little bit better, I guess it probably doesn't really matter quite what you're reading to him. But anyways, like I said, it just sounds like a really interesting book, and I want to definitely learn more to see if I can't find other ways to help him out, basically get a really good head start on life. So there you guys have it. Those are my, I think, 11 books that I'm going to try and read in the month of November. And like I said, there's I think 14 or 15 challenges. Double and triple them up if you want to. Just let me know what you guys thought of some of these books, if you've read them or read the authors or know about them, anything like that. Leave some comments down below, and also leave some comments down below for what you're reading. I'd like to definitely find out any nonfiction that you're reading in the month of November. But always remember, whatever you decide to read, read victoriously.